Hello, how's it going? I am. There we go. Let's get the jitters out. Hello, everyone. My name's Bonnie Violet. I'm a queer chaplain. And in case you don't know where you are at Drag and Spirituality as part of our gender diverse summer series. This is episode 6 with Maxima Lyght, and I will be bringing them on just shortly. But I wanted to take a moment to also mention the Drag and Spirituality Summit, which is taking place in Chicago on October 7th through the 9th. We're still looking to book folks as well as, panelists and registration, all that sort of fun stuff. We're just a few weeks away. So go to dragonspirituality.com. The link is in the description. Yes, and big shout out to them for supporting this series. This is kind of an opportunity. This is kind of an immersion of, say, like a show and conversation. So we're going to go ahead and once Maxima is up, we'll share their links to Instagram as well as Venmo. So you can feel free to send some coin in their direction if you feel so inclined. I'm sure they would appreciate it. I want to say hello to Elo in Nashville. So glad that you could join us this evening. For folks who are watching, feel free to put in the comments, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, put in the comments and we'll interact with you as best we can. If you have questions, if you just want to say we're beautiful, all that sort of stuff, that works too. I'm trying to think any other house cleaning stuff. I don't think there is. So I'd love for us just to kind of get going. So I am going to bring up our guest here. Here we go. Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
Bonnie.
How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm a little nervous. I
Uh, don't be. Don't be. I fumbled. I'm kind of fumbling around myself, so we'll get through it together though.
will be fumbling this together.
Right, right. So glad that you could join me this evening.
Thank you for inviting me. What an honor it is to be here.
Yeah, yeah. I was excited when I saw that you were interested. And let's just go ahead and get to it. Let's see. So I usually someone else is sending some love. Danny Guerrero is sending some unicorns and purple hearts. So glad you could join us. Right. That's the person helping you, right? Nice. Awesome. All right. So I like to get right in with just kind of, I try to go ease in really nice and easy. And I want to hear a little bit about your childhood and kind of what your experience was around spirituality.
My name is Maxima of the House of Lyght,
Yes.
formerly known as Glenn. He was born in Los Angeles and he grew up in the church, literally was born into the church. I had a lot of spiritual practices and ideologies around me when I was growing up. So a very, I had an idea early on of what spirituality looked like. I'm not saying it was the only type of spirituality, but it was one form that I had encountered early in my life. Being in the church allowed me to categorize myself in a way to be like what was good and evil per se. So in that sense, it was great for me to be like, oh, I understand a realm of what everyone's talking about. Like obviously, like no stealing, like no this and like no killing and like things like that. But obviously, um, innately, I am an angry person, and I knew that from the start. So I was an angry child. So I would lash out in different ways. Um, but I was still intrigued. I was still questioning everything, and I think that's what I was just angry because I didn't know. But
Mhm.
more about my youth. I was great in school. Even though I was rebellious, I was an amazing A student. I was in the gifted or whatever, in AP and honors. But it was great to challenge myself academically, and I feel like tapped out of my spirituality as in my like teen years. I started disconnecting myself from God, the universe, or myself per se. I started looking for other things,
Mhm.
and
Do you
that's
know
when
what?
kind of Mhm.
Do you know what kind of sparked that for you
The
to kind of?
leading,
Mhm.
I think it came from the fact that I didn't know who I was, so I was wanting to know who I was and wanted to see my wants and my needs. Um, but I soon saw that some of my needs weren't necessarily what I needed. But I'm talking too general right now. I should be talking more specific.
That's okay.
Um, I grew up in a Christian church. I should be more specific. So I would go to church like Tuesday, Friday, Sundays. Like it was like a thing. It was family. It was a great place to be. I had a lot of friends there. I would love going there because I had friends and we would, do what other friends did, gossip and talk and play and fight. Actually, fought somebody with a Bible one time at the chairs of it, at like the stairs of a church, and because I was just so mad at like he was my best friend at the time.
Mhm.
Um,
You thumped him with the Bible?
I thumped him with the Bible because I was just so mad at him. I don't even remember what we were arguing about, but church was a great place for me. It was spiritual because I had an extended family. I had multiple moms and dads. They would care for me, and I realized that spirituality also meant like village, like a community. Like that was part of spirituality. It takes a village to rear a child, they say, but it is very true. And I saw that firsthand. Being from a lower class family, we needed things, and so they were always there financially, for food and other things, and it was a blessing to have those
Mm.
brothers and sisters in Christ from a very young age.
Were your parents or your guardians, were they, super involved too?
My dad was not very involved at the church when I was first born, but as we speak now, he is like semi a pastor. I don't
Okay.
know if he's like officially obtained the title because the former pastor is leaving the congregation and he's the last male per se leader. And so now he's teaching every other day during virtual conferences that we have.
Mhm.
But yeah, so
Yeah.
I've been surrounded by the church for a long time. I still am. I go to church virtually and in person when I can. But yeah,
Within the same tradition or?
within the exact same tradition. Yeah,
Yeah.
even though there are some things that I don't necessarily agree upon, and it might be because of like translation and things like that, and I don't want to get too like in depth with
Right.
like theology, but yeah, things like that. But doesn't mean that it scared me because it alienated me per se, and that's what I'm trying to say earlier by categorize me. Like I realized that, oh, okay, I'm different.
Mhm.
Definitely being in the church, it made me realize that, wow, you are not like everybody else, like nowhere near like everybody else. And it was eye
Mhm.
awakening in that sense that like maybe that's when it first started, the spark of me trying to look for something else. It was within the church too. Like I wanted to disassociate myself because I felt unwanted or dirty, or
Mhm.
because of certain rhetoric that was being thrown in my direction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
How did you like, as a young person who was so into it and got so much from it and then ended up kind of needing to step away, how did you kind of cope with that? Or did something else kind of take its place or?
Yes, something else took its place. Drugs took its place. And I feel like that's an easy escape for a lot of people, and it was for me. I think it started with alcohol, and I'm not saying like it's like a domino effect, but maybe because I was just young and naive, and I didn't know what everything did. I've heard what they did. We all took the course of like drug ed and like blah blah blah, and
Mhm.
we've seen the effects of like 20 to 50 years later, and we're all precautioned about the certain substances, but we still want to know firsthand those experiences, and I did. And certain substances overrode my spirituality for a couple of years. I'm now a recovering addict of methamphetamines.
Congrats.
Um, it's a couple of months now. I have relapsed, but it doesn't change the fact that I want to change, and I realized how much better I am without them.
Hmm.
To be even here and present in this moment, I think it's a gift from the universe, God, whatever you believe in, because otherwise I would not be here,
Hmm.
because I would be there doing something else. Because it's so
Yes.
easy and attainable in our community, and I feel like I want to be a beacon of light and be an advocate for our community and be like not judge but be like a supporter. So yeah, I want to be able to hand out like those fentanyl test strips and allow people to know those information. So it's like a guilty-free advocate. Like,
Mm.
yeah, I'm gonna speak of my personal experience on what happened, and obviously I'm gonna warn you not to do it because of my experience. But also, here's other information that if you're willing to still do so, to keep it safe and sound within your
Right.
group.
So it sounds like you're working on abstinence for you, but you're supportive of harm reduction as an overall practice for folks.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Nice. And and is your spirituality, is that part of your sobriety, or were you kind of back into like the church setting before that?
Was I, wait, the question was as
So, well, because we've kind of jumped a little bit, and
we
so I
did.
wanted to get a sense of like when did you kind of pick up church again and that
Um,
sort of habit?
uh, it's
Was
funny
that
because
prior to getting sober?
I would still go to church, like even like during my episodes, like
Got
it'd
you.
be funny, like it'd be, ironic, like showing up to church and be like tweaking out almost. Um, yeah, I, but I still stepped away because at that point I stopped my privileges because I used to have privileges, what they call privileges, where like you participate and you pray in the front as a male identifying persona. Um, in the church, we do that, and so I stopped those privileges, and so in that sense, I stepped away from the church.
Hmm.
But then when I was seeking my recovery a couple years back, um, I did seek this church in the sense that I wanted to be surrounded by people of faith, and it was just the easiest and most accessible and most familiar location for me. Um, it doesn't mean won't participate or want to go to any other sort of gatherings. And it was also easier because my parents would participate and I would want to go with them. So
Hmm. Yeah. I totally relate to that. I too had similar experience of like loving church and then leaving church and escaping in drugs and alcohol. And then, kind of like, a lot of the journey that you're speaking of is something it just reminds me of the journey I've been on too. And so many of the journeys, unfortunately, that we hear about, with folks in our community. And, so you are part of the House of Light. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and when that came
uh,
about?
I am part of the House of Lights. I am a virgin voguer. I was invited to the house by Father Lights last year around May. No, it was like a little earlier, like February. And then um, I was just flabbergasted because I had been around people of the ballroom community and I'd been to a couple of balls, but I had never considered myself to be, part of the community until I was asked to be part of a house. And I was thrilled at the opportunity because, I mean,
Yeah.
what day do you get asked to be in a house? And I thought it was a great opportunity, especially because if he was a good friend of mine, Father Light, Raiku, we had danced together for many projects beforehand and had been part of organizations that dealt with substance abuse and that combined with the arts. So we were, he's an artist as well. And so he started the house and and a couple of other lights, we would get together and practice and work in our elements if we were voguing and our our strutting and our poses if we were doing runway, and we would like work on our categories. And then of course we were asked to be on Legendary, and that happened. I don't want to spill too much tea because they did ask us to be on TV. It was a wild experience because I mean uh to be on a show with other Legendary people, it was like amazing. I mean, I got to meet Aja, who's one of my
Mm.
like amazing, like just I wouldn't say idol because now I know her, so it's like weird to like disconnect myself. Like, oh, I met her and she's amazing. And but yeah, it was a great experience. I wouldn't change it for the world. And I still love, not that I didn't not love my house at any point, but I love my house, and and I'm here for them. And a big shout out to them, Father Lights, and the rest of Lights as well.
Yeah, and there's something a little unique about the House of Light, yeah?
It is because, good points. I didn't mention that. One of the reasons why I wanted to join the House of Light was because it was gonna change the narrative of what we've been seeing in the community. It was like toxicity and a disconnect of community and the lack of spirituality in a sense. And so he wanted to bring a group of people that wanted to be one truthful to themselves, but also be a light in the world per se. And so show their love and their energy and their commitment to themselves and to our community through spiritual practices, and realizing that we are together, we are in this together. Like there's no need for divide.
Yeah.
And I think that was a beautiful message that Father is still advocating to this day. And there is also, I mean, myself and I don't want to name anybody else, but yeah, myself that advocate for substance abuse, and we're recovering addicts. And it's a great place to be because uh, I feel accepted. I feel like I'm not needing to explain myself. I mean, I do sometimes when we're arguing about choreography and why this should be in this position, but it's not about our ideals. It's not about our morality. It's not about any of that kind of stuff. It's
Mhm.
more about like our artistic goals that we're fighting.
Some
I feel like
uh, I'm curious, how has the ballroom community in general kind of responded to that the house? I know like oftentimes spirituality is such a taboo in our communities, and I'm curious how I don't know, I'm just curious how that's played out for you all
I
in
feel
the
like it's been
overall scene.
a mixed reaction, especially having been on TV. I feel like it was a very mixed reaction. But I feel like the people that did see us for who we were and what we wanted to spread, um, definitely were on our side and would DM us individually into the house and show us their love. And I think that was one of the best things about being on Legendary, that you got to connect with people around the world and that got to see your story and and connected to your story. And to be that person on TV too, like you don't get to see many queer Latinos or Latinx or folk on TV. So it was great to see myself finally on TV, literally and
Yeah.
figuratively.
Yeah, yeah. I really loved that too. Like just watch I love Legendary and watching it and then getting introduced to the House of Light. I was like, oh, that's so like I'd never heard of anything like that. So I thought it was really great to think of the idea of spirituality, because houses like the house scene in and of itself is kind of great as far as the family dynamic and the community and those aspects. So I just had never thought about the spiritual aspect of it before.
It's definitely something that we don't talk about, even in our daily lives. I mean, it's something like we are like told, like now we're like we don't talk about religion, but it's like it doesn't have to be religion per se. It just could be you go to church. Like it's something
Mm.
that I do because it helps me. Like maybe talk about, oh, well, how your experience at the temple. Well, I have other queer friends that do go still that are
Yeah,
Jewish per se, but I've yet to ask them because they're relatively new friends. But still, I feel like I would want to know their
yeah, yeah.
practices as well because everyone's story is different. And
Hmm.
it's good to hear other people's stories.
Yeah, yeah, it's great to be able to have an opportunity to talk about spiritual shit.
Mm,
Not not everyone's really open to that at all. Was drag something you had done prior to getting into the house, or was that part of being part of the house?
I think that was probably one of the, I don't want to say another big reason, but it was definitely another big reason for me because I've always had wanted to do drag, and Butch Queen up in drags is a category,
Hmm.
and wanted to compete as a drag queen. Uh,
What kept what kept you from that?
Not having a scene, not having a place. Well, I didn't think there was a place for me.
Hmm.
And then now that I'm a drag queen, I realize that there are a lot of places. Well, I'm a drag king, drag queen, drag monster, but still, there are places for drag artists in general. And it has opened my eyes now working in the industry. Like, there are a lot of people out there that are allies. And I feel like I'm used to just thinking of like a world that's full of hate and like
Hmm.
darkness. But LA is beautiful. I think that is also the difference that being in LA, I'm exposed to so many people. But yeah, drag. I was exposed to drag through ballroom, and now I almost exclusively compete in drag when I walk Virgin Vogue. But yeah, I love it. It gives me a sense of pride, and it is fun. Even though I
Yeah,
do get stressful because I'm like, well, it helps me get the nerves out a little bit because I just anytime I perform, I'm just like, and then like the 2 hours of just looking at myself in the mirror and being like, you've got this. Like, you've made it this far. Like, God has given you this opportunity to even be here and be a drag artist. Like, take the opportunity and like run with it.
right. What
Yeah.
is your spirituality look like now? Do you have like a practice at all, or?
I still go to church. I read when I can the scriptures. My practices include self love. I feel like that has a huge aspect in spirituality because if you don't love yourself, then how are you gonna love anything else around you? And I feel like being spiritual means being in tune with things that are around you that are not necessarily you
Mhm.
and or oneself, not like, but yeah, myself. And my other practices include dance. I love dancing. Pole dancing is my one of my newer ones.
Mhm.
Drag obviously is one of the greatest and all-time favorite. And I like to mix them now. So I'm now doing like Vogue, pole, drag shows, and yeah. The practices, I forget my practices, include eating healthy. I feel like I realized that self-love includes nutrition, and I feel like I'm like cutting back on like the junk food, the McDonald's, and I feel like that's my body's responding and my mentality is responding. I'm also recovering from the trauma of abuse from substances, so I'm like trying to recover everything that I've lost per se, to
Mhm.
and like rebuild myself because I feel like I've been scattered. I've just been like, and I'm like
Yeah, yeah.
sewing myself back together per se.
Yeah. I think I love that you brought that up because I think a lot of the times when we think about spiritual practices, it's prayer or lighting candles or reading scripture. But like, I think for me as a spiritual person, like every freaking thing I do is kind of a result of my spirituality. Like all the things that have come about, like me doing drag, me transitioning was all a direct result of me beginning to like live a spiritual life and really trying to put that first, you know?
Mm,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yes, I think we had a little bit of a glitch there with the connection. So sorry for that, folks. Feel free to ask questions that you might have. Those who are watching, there are folks watching. I see you. Don't be shy. Um, I was curious about how your gender plays into like just can you tell me a little bit about your gender story?
My gender story has been tumultuous, especially growing up in the church and realizing that I was queer. I've had this disconnect with my male identity. and having always have this standard for myself, well, from society to be like, oh, you have to dress a certain type of way, or like, or you can't wear jeans too tight, like that's too girly, like um made me realize that I shouldn't give a fuck. I mean, oh,
Mm.
sorry for me cursing, but yeah, I
You can
shouldn't.
cuss.
I shouldn't give 2 cents. I should be paying it, no mind,
Mm.
because at the end of the day, it's clothes and it doesn't have an assign. I mean, gender is a construct, and I realized that early. And having known that the intersex community exists, and I feel
Mm.
like their erasure in history and society um, is a sin in itself because God created them, and so therefore God created our community, the gays. And I feel like we forget that they exist. And it also made me realize that clothes, like I was saying earlier, like clothes don't have gender. And it being the rebellious person I am, I wanted to kind of piss people off a little bit by dressing differently
Mm.
and also be like that person to be like, you can do whatever you want because I'm doing whatever I want. In that sense, like you could do anything that you can and
Mhm.
you should, whatever makes you happy. And so
Yeah.
now I dress, well, at balls, I would say I would dress definitely non-binary femme.
Mhm.
And my daily, I'm starting to switch my, because well, I've always just been used to having just male clothing. And so I haven't updated
Mhm.
my wardrobe. So now I'm like having to like readjust my like wardrobe and be like, I'm not wearing that t-shirt today because why would I wear a t-shirt today?
Right, right. So I know that your drag persona, you know, you use all like he, she, and them pronouns. In your day to day, is it the same or
I believe so. He's not bothered. They're not bothered by it. Yeah,
right?
yeah, definitely not bothered by it. Just because like yeah, because as a non-binary person, well, maybe because maybe it doesn't affect me because I'm non-binary, and so I can
Mhm.
switch to any spectrum at any, and I could be super femme 1 second and be super mass the next day. Like it just depends on my mood and how I feel and how I want to feel.
Yeah. Do you find that difficult in your spiritual settings or no?
Yes, very difficult in my spiritual settings. Well, in the church setting per se, because I would say other spiritual practices would be like going to a ball. That's
Hmm.
definitely a spiritual practice for me. Like being
Yes.
surrounded by my community is it's like one of the biggest practices I could probably do. Like and connecting with individuals and other members of the house and double O's and hearing their stories and connecting. Just I think that's beautiful. Like surrounded by
Yeah.
queer folk, there's
Mhm.
nothing like it.
Yeah.
But what was the original topic of like? Oh yeah, I don't feel in that sense in the church. I don't feel comfortable. Like even with my hair, sometimes like it's like if it's like too long, like and if it's like down, I feel like I'm disrespected. But I know I'm not. But it's just
Mm.
like I don't want to be that person in the church because I just feel like these people are too old school for me to talk to.
Mm.
Well, because my congregation is a little more old school, and I just don't want to start anything with them because it's not worth either of our times. And
Yeah.
so it's just to avoid the situation. But yeah, I wish, but that's something I chose. Like, I know there are queer churches like in Long Beach that I've been invited to, and I have access to it. Like, I could go down there and dress however I'd like and be queer,
Hmm.
pass it up however I like, and feel great. And but I also go because my family.
Yeah.
Um, I don't want to say like just because it's my family, but like I do love my family. So
Yeah.
anytime I get to spend with them, and then of course we get to sing together. So it's like that's like a spiritual practice in itself, like
Yeah.
singing. So and then get to sing with my family and like yeah,
Hmm.
it's great in a choir. Like yeah, it's fun. I love
Yeah,
it.
I understand that. I think it was really important for me on my spiritual journey when I did find myself back into church to have a space that was familiar, that reminded me of the church that I grew up in. For some reason, I just going to a queer church, I don't know, there was a part of me that needed to be touched. by like being accepted and being loved in an environment that isn't just for queer people. I don't know. For me, I think that felt important for some reason in my journey. We we do have a question from the comments. Veronica in Nashville, who is one of our future guests, asked, "Do you bring your spirituality into your performance?"
I do. I absolutely do. One of my very first drag pieces was about my sobriety, and um, I like to bring my history, what I've gone through, to my performances. And I did a song on, I forget the song name, but it's loose. It's called Lose Control, and it literally relates to my life at that I've lost control, and it was like a foreshadow piece, but it's spiritual in the sense that it's like um what is that word when you it's not like a baptism, but it's like
Like
a
a cleansing or
it's like a cleansing. Yeah, it's
yeah.
like a purification. Like it's like I went through this and I'm like going through it in the moment, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then I let it go as my art, as I should be as an artist. I should just let my art go, and
Mm,
um I do bring it into my performances in my song choices. I do Vogue sometimes, so I feel like that is a spiritual practice in itself, being kind. Um,
mm,
because been, I feel like I haven't talked about that. My dance experience, where like my entire dance career or like training was so male European centered that I was never allowed to dance like a woman
mm,
until I was introduced to Vogue. And that in itself, I feel like is one of my newer practices, obviously as a virgin voguer. Um, and I love it, and I feel like I need it because there's literally no other form that I could dance
mm.
as a woman.
Right. And have you like right? Has what do you have you noticed anything that's changed for you in your life since you started doing drag? Like about your day to day?
I feel like I carry myself with a different air. Like you're Maxima. Like
Mm,
you were on TV. Like you put your story out there on that performance. Like I'm not even talking about legend. I'm just talking about like even like my drag performances. I'm just like you put that out there, or my pole performance, or you put that out there. Like you're doing it, and you're still going out there and performing at the next ball. Like I feel like I'm more proud of myself than I've ever been in my life. I feel like I've
mm,
accomplished something. I feel like I've not necessarily found myself, but I found a version of myself that I'm willing to work with and adapt and grow with instead of
mm,
hate and like look at it and be like, why are you like this? Instead of I love you because of this and the way
mm.
you are. And
Yeah.
I
It
feel
sounds
like
like you I was
sorry,
gonna say it sounds like you've been able to release some parts of yourself and express some parts of yourself that you weren't able to for so long.
right. Yeah, I think that's what drag has allowed me to do. Has allowed me to realize that there are things that I can't change, like my face. And I just have to deal with it.
Right?
But it's a good love because now I look at myself completely different. It's so funny because when I do makeup and then like I'm like in love with it in the moment and then I'm like, okay, it's time to wash it off. And then I look at myself in the mirror and then I'm like, you did that. Like you
Mm,
transformed into somebody else. Like that persona was there. And it's still there. Like as I'm still looking at myself in the mirror, I'm like, she's still there.
right, right.
I mean, they're still there, he's still there. Yeah. There
Right.
you go.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I find it so empowering too, and I think for me it was like getting into drag a lot. It kind of like gave me permission to try on different things that I kind of wanted to try on, both like literally in like the physical aspect, but I think also just being on stage or changing how I express myself or present myself or even tell my story, you
Mm.
know?
You bring up a good point, like the attire. For sure, it allowed me to wear feminine clothes, drag, when I first entered the drag scene and the ballroom scene. But now I'm much more open to a lot. I mean, that's why I consider myself a drag artist and not a drag queen anymore. Obviously, a drag queen up, a butch queen up in drags and ballroom, but um, I feel like I'm open to every style out there because there's no blueprint. I mean, yeah, there's a blueprint if you like to follow blueprint, but then there's also the originals, and yeah, it's a great feeling being like a pioneer in that sense.
Hmm.
Where, like you could do whatever you want and be an original, and then have somebody else like be inspired because of you, and be your original art. But that's a great feeling as an artist. In
Mhm.
general, I'm sure all artists feel that way that their work is original, and we all share that in common. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm what keeps coming up for me, and I sometimes don't like the word just because I feel like it gets used a lot, but like authenticity, like it
Mm.
seems like, you're getting an opportunity to live more authentically or, like kind of practice that authenticity as a practice.
Yes, where like you know for a fact that you know what you want in that moment and be like yes or no. I feel like that's a very powerful position to be in your life, to be saying yes or no and not being like, oh, I don't know, I guess I'm gonna have to do it because no, just be like, I don't want to do it. Or yes, I would love to do it. And I feel like authenticity is everything nowadays. And I feel like that
Mm.
LA gets such a bad rep with that word. They're like, you people are just so fake. And they're like, well, it's always people that I'm not from LA. I'm like, yeah, I know. I know. But um, drag has allowed me to be more authentic for sure. With my, even with my authentic with my practices and realizing that there's some things that have to change, like my eating, and I was talking about beforehand. Like there were things that I needed to address, and I'm glad that I'm addressing them now because I feel like my mental health is also part of my huge
Mm.
part of my spiritual practices, where it's like I have to be learning something too. Like that's like I have to engage my mind. I love learning about like space, like the James Webb like telescope. Like that's definitely like one of my newest things that I love to learn about because it's just like feeding my brain, and like I love science and what scientists are doing nowadays, and it's great for the human like race per se that we're doing nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I think sometimes what is mental and what is spiritual, I think for me, for a good part of my life, it's hard to discern which is what. Like I feel like they've
Mm.
always been enmeshed, but it's been great to have and be able to notice and see that there are mental aspects and there are spiritual aspects, and sometimes they're connected,
So they're connected.
but they're also separate too. Finn Ware says hello, lovelies, and Finn is in the Bay Area, so glad that you could join us. Um, I'm curious, do you have a stage that you are like a dream stage you'd like to find yourself on one day?
Yeah, there's definitely I've thought about several venues where I would love to like sell out one day and just be there performing. I've thought about like the Ford. I've thought about like this, oh, it's called the Crypto Center now, whatever it's called. It used to be Staples Center, but the crypto.com arena. My dream stage will probably be oh, there's so many good stages and it would be for different occasions. I mean, I for the biggest stage, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. That's a very good question.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the sky's the limit sometimes. I feel like sometimes when I say this is my thing, I think it's helpful to like say this is the thing, but sometimes, I think having a clear idea of what you want sometimes can get in the way of like other opportunities that might come your way?
hmm. If I had to say, my dream stage would be in Dodger Stadium.
Nice, nice. And you
Just off the top of my head right now, just because it's in LA and it's a pretty big venue, and masks won't be required if it were anytime soon. That's
Yeah.
amazing. But I have a couple of comments here
Oh,
on,
cool.
on my oh,
Awesome.
should I have not done that?
No, you're fine. Go
Uh,
ahead.
oh, I thought they were. Oh, they were saying someone was saying on here, I just wanted to say as a recovering human, this life is super. I'm so grateful. Still taking steps to get off all the substances, but the hard stuff is gone. I hope for good. Ultimately, thank you guys, friends. So that's
Awesome.
from IG Tori. Thank you so much for joining in on uh, our live.
Yeah.
Shout out to everybody else that said hi. I think that's it. Yeah.
We are in like the last few minutes of our time. We're at like 42 minutes. So I usually try to keep it to about 45. But is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that we haven't got a chance to speak about today?
Uh, I love to ride motorcycles, and my favorite color is turquoise. And I love playing Pokemon. I don't
Now
know
all
what.
the now all the real stuff is coming out.
I'm a femtop. I don't know what else you want to know.
That's all good. How can folks connect with you?
Oh, that's right. You can find me at Maxima Lyght on Facebook, on IG, and you can find me on on the house page, on the House of Lyght page too. Yeah, you'll see me on there too. So, but yeah,
Awesome. So
Maxima Lyght.
Instagram is really where it's at for connecting with
Yeah,
you.
that's my main form of communication. So if you want to book me, you know where to hit me up.
Yes, hit them up for sure. Well, thank you so much for joining me this evening and being a part of this summer series. Super stoked that you are a part of the cast, and yeah, I just wish you all the best in your recovery and your journey and drag and spirituality. So thanks so much. And I'm just going to say goodbye to everyone. Thanks for joining us, and check out the links in the description to learn about next week's episode with Restylane Pieces out of Florida. Excited for that conversation as well. So take care and ta-ta for now.
Uh,
Oops, wrong button.